Hello and good evening and welcome to the Caithness Amateur Dram Antic Society tasting. And tonight I'm going to be doing a tasting of a little box that I ordered from Cadenhead. It's the Cadenhead Original Collection and Enigma tasting of September 2024. It comes in a nice little pack. Cadenhead Original Collection and Enigma tasting, and you open it and you get a little tasting card with some details of the collections and also a tasting notes card as well. And you get six little bottles of 2cl drams of each of the whiskies. So the whiskies tonight are the Girvan 1991 33-year-old at 46%, the Ben Nevis 2012 11-year-old at 46%, Tullibardine 2012 12-year-old 46%, and then an Enigma blended malt from 1997, which is 27 years old and is bottled at 51.8%. And then Ardmore 2012 11-year-old at 46%, and finishing up with Enigma Islay 2008 15-year-old bottled at 54.8%. So the Cadenhead Original Collection is set up to provide a showcase from a variety of distilleries from Scotland and beyond. Cadenhead select casks from their warehouses in Campbelltown to explore and they say present the best that each one has to offer. And then the Cadenhead Enigma series are whiskies that are a bit more unusual, harder to quantify, and they say perhaps even slightly contradictory. They can be single casks, vattings of multiple casks, blended malts, or whatever else they find that doesn't fit into their existing bottling lineup. So tonight we're going to start off with the Girvan 1991 33-year-old bottled at 46%. Girvan, of course, is a grain distillery, and it's one of the largest whisky distilleries in Scotland. You'll find the Girvan facility in South Ayrshire. It was built in 1963 by hundreds of locals in just 9 months. This whisky was distilled in 1991 and spent 33 years in a bourbon barrel before bottling in 2024. So a grain whisky. Let's see what we have here. It's quite pale for 33 years old. And it has tears. They're quite thin tears. There's not much of a tide line there. Let's see what we have in the nose. The initial thing is it's quite chemical, which isn't a surprise for a grain whisky. But it becomes fruitier and sweeter almost immediately. I'm thinking unripe banana and coconut, and then some Milky Bar white chocolate, vanilla, and there's a touch of oak there as well. I'm thinking warm wood shavings or freshly sawed planks. And over time it gets sweeter again. It's very pleasant. I'm getting ginger snaps, grassy, toffee, polished oak. It's sweet and it's fruity, apples and bananas. a bit oily. Wholemeal toast, a little bit of spicy toffee in there as well. I'm going to try the mouth. And the rival is slightly creamy and spicy. And there's licorice and a mild saltiness emerges. It's not, from what the nose gave me, on the mouth it's not as sweet as I would have expected. And the banana trades place with pineapple. It's quite chewy. Brandy snaps. Marzipan. Carrot cake. It's a sort of oily, creamy butterscotch. Toffee, citrus, and a little bit of saltiness there. Very pleasant though. And it's on the finish, the coconut maroon, orange essence, butterscotch. It's a medium long, smooth finish, clean, fresh, honey, saltiness, a spicy, loads of oak, and there's saltiness lining it all. I'm going to try 4 drops of water in this. And there's certainly some Scotch mist in there. Let's see. And that solventy grain whiskey shows up again, a little bit like sniffing glue. Coconuts and vanilla. Unripe banana. It's a little bit of leatheriness, wet leather, and white chocolate. And toffee apples with whiffs of freshly sawn oak again. Try the mouth. Again, it's less sweet than you would think. Creamy white chocolate and vanilla. And there's also some more spice there, white pepper and licorice. Hints of oatmeal cookies, sweet citrus, tin pineapples, and butterscotch. And the finish, it's not too long now. It's quite smooth though, and there's hints of spicy oak there. So this is a good grain. I'm not overly fond of grain whiskey. I find them a little bit chemically, and but this one is a good grain. It's not overly sweet and not as vanilla laden as some other grain whiskies that I've tried that have been bourbon cask matured. So yeah, that was a good one to start with. I'm going to cleanse my palate tonight with quite a meaty oat cake here from Duncan's on D-side. Quite thick. I'm only going to have half of this, I think. That's quite a meaty oatcake. Yeah, almost like a smoked pork or something. So, next up, we're moving to Fort William for a Ben Nevis 2012 11-year-old bottled at 46%. Fort William, I don't know if you've ever visited Fort William, but it's not the most charming of towns, especially when you arrive on the train and you have to go through a little underpass and you come out, and it is the town is a little bit down in its luck, and you feel that the street is a little run down as well, the main street, and then the beautiful bay. And it would be hard to sugarcoat Fort William, the town, but it does have a stunning backdrop with Ben Nevis and the loch. And that does captivate visitors from every direction. But when you step into the town, it becomes clear that it craves investment and a touch of care, much like many other remote towns across Scotland. But on a brighter note, Fort William has made a name for itself in the whisky world. The now defunct Glenlochy distillery, though no longer in operation, showcased the quintessential Highland whisky style, while its remnants now provide a home for locals. If we journey further down the road, we discover another gem still thriving, Ben Nevis Distillery. Though the golden days with their accessibility and reasonable prices are long gone, Ben Nevis whisky remains a testament to quality. And with this one, we have a vatting here that Cadenheads have preserved at a robust 46%. So this was distilled in 2012, spent 11 years in bourbon barrel before bottling in 2024. And again, it's quite pale in colour. And it has tears, but they're very thin. The tide line is quite a thin one. Let's see what the nose is like on this. I'm getting apple strudel, icing sugar, white grapes, cinnamon, and there's a light tropical fruitiness. Star anise, there's plenty of character in this. Fruit loaf, orange peel, peach, and it's refreshing. It's bready in parts, and there's some green pineapple there. It's fresh, fruity, plenty of pickled pears, mandarins, pineapple, and vanilla. And you know, it reminds me a lot of a canned fruit cocktail. But it's also mildly spicy with a light smoky note in the background. Overall, it's very well rounded and pleasant. We'll try this on the mouth. And it's quite creamy. You get that whole grain cereal, malty, and gooseberries. There's a slight bitterness there as well. Buttery fruit scones. and soft, ripe apples, like a Bakewell tart. Pancakes, green tea leaves, and that slight touch of earthiness. Dried fruits, sweet pastry, and green bananas with some sweet. It's finely tart, peppery, and oily. Whilst at first the canned fruit is not to be found, the oak spice spreads in the mouth and goes hand in hand with a lot of white pepper. But after a few sips, some pear and light floral notes come through. Vanilla and burnt caramel are also present now. And on the finish, kiwi skin, flint notes, salted caramel, barley sugar, and barley drops. It's long, spicy, and peppery, and it's characterized by the oak spice and the pepper, which becomes more and more prominent on the finish. I'm going to try 4 drops of water in this. And there's a lovely Scotch mist there. And now I get the zingy fruit, peaches and apricots, with a dash of orange peel and a sort of nutty roasted marzipan. I'll try them out. I get nugget, flake nuts, sweet runny honey, and fruitcake spices. And I get floral sweetness on the finish, and honey biscuits with a peppercorn prickle. Well, this is a good example of the original collection approach. Distilleries gain advantages from batting, and certain distillates maintain their characteristics and resonate at 46%. I think this is a good whiskey, and I've tasted 1 or 2 Ben Nevises, and this is up there with one of the better ones I've had. So we'll carry on with the Duncans and decide other half. So now we're going to have a Highland whiskey from Tullibardine. It's Tullibardine 2012, 12-year-old at 46%. So, Tullibardine Distillery is located in the village of Blackford, which is sometimes referred to as the gateway to the Highlands. It started life as a beer brewery that was favoured by King James IV of Scotland before it eventually became a whisky distillery in the late 1940s. Although distilling had been briefly tried on several occasions before that. It's gone through numerous changes in ownership since then and has enjoyed its fair share of ups and downs, but it takes its pride of place in Cadenhead's range now. They have bottled several whiskies from Tullibardine. This one distilled in 2012 and then was re-racked into a Palo Cortado cask in 2021 before bottling in 2024. And you can see it is a bit darker than the first two. So let's see what the sherry cask has done to Tullibardine. It has nice tears. And I get the chocolate orange, the syrup and the licorice, raisins, apricots, peach, caramel and honey. It's malty with apple and toffee. And it does have a real nutty character too, which you'd expect from the Palo Cortado finishing. And it's almost like a walnut. Some dried fruits, sherry, gingerbread. And there's almost a rye-like quality to the spice. And there's some red berries in there too. We'll try the mouth of this. And this is dark chocolate, maraschino cherries, dried apricot and dried mango, raisins, apricots, peach, caramel, ginger pepper, and nutmeg. And there's more of that rye note. Lots of gingery spice and oak. Touch of charcoal there. Chewy toffee and Werther's Originals. They're like a sort of hard toffee that we get in Britain. And on the finish, coffee, salted caramel truffles, nutmeg, a bit chalky, almonds and dried fruit linger for a while. I'll try 4 drops in this one too. There's a fantastic Scotch mist in this one. It's creamy and sweet with sweet caramel, crisp orange, gingery and nutty. And then some rich honey comes through. It's elegant and delicate, but not too dry. We'll try that at the mouth. This is lighter than I would have expected. I get vanilla tablet, toffee, honey, and a touch of toastiness clashes beautifully with nutty sweetness and gingery notes. There's a subtle butterscotch hiding in the background. It's got good richness, depth, and intensity. And on the finish, it's dry, woody, spicy, lively and playful. And a sweet nut brittle gives way to the drying toffee and a pleasant little ginger nip there. So, Tullibardine, mixed relationship with Tullibardine. Not totally enamoured with the distillery's core range, with the sort of strange numbering system 225, 228, and such like. But for this one, the sherry cask has added some new layers and made things a little more interesting. It's still spirit led, but there's more going on, I think. It has a subtle, dry, sherry character rather than the big, sweet, raisiny blanket you often find. And I think that finish works well with the young, malty Tullibardine spirit. I think when Cadenhead's got opened sampled the cask back in 2021 before they re-racked it into Palo Cortado, they felt it needed something, and uh, I think it worked quite well with the young malty Tullibardine spirit, which the Tullibardine malt is famed for high toned floral notes, which is suitable to go into first fill casks and is very welcomed in any type of wine finish. So that's not bad. So we'll have another half of the Dunkins of D-side oatcakes. So now we have the first of the Enigmas. Enigma blended malt, 1997, 27-year-old, 51.8%. So it's 27 years old, which is a bold age statement. And typically, blended malts of that kind of vintage are derived from edging stock, from what I've seen over my years of tasting whiskey. But it's not a certainty. And I have heard that this one may be a Willie Grant's, and it may well be a teaspoon Glenfiddich. In which case, what's happened is they've got a cask of Glenfiddich which has been teaspooned with probably a teaspoon of Canimbi. So let's see. 27 years old, blended malt. Aged in bourbon casks. So this will be the oldest Glenfiddich I've had. I've had the 25-year-old Grand Cru and the 23-year-old Caribbean cask one, which was lovely. The Grand Cru was good as well. But let's see what Cadenheads have made of this. And lovely tears. Fantastic. Thick church windows there. So this is 51.8%. And I do get the fresh green apple and the vanilla paste. Butter biscuits. Toffee bonbons. And a ginger sponge cake. Cocoa nibs. And there's a little warehouse must there as well. It's like sweet and a very typical bourbon nose. And it's quite a typical Speyside nose for me. The alcohol hit is a bit more prominent than I expected for the low 50% ABV. However, it's not too overpowering in the grand scheme of things. And spending time with it, you get a bit of honeycomb, pear drops, and a little white pepper. Custard creams, pears, cinnamon. And it's like walking into the baker's when they've got the warm pastries there. A butterscotch mousse, honey and buttery spices and vanilla, pears, and there's a bit of floralness there too. Chewits, fruit chews, a bit of mintiness, shortbread. It's fresh and it's inviting. We'll try them out on this. And it opens with lots of freshly pressed apple juice. A little fresh lemon too, melon balls, simple sugar and lime zest. It's zingy and very citrus forward and a little spritzy. It reminds me a bit of white grape Schloer. And that mouthfeel, it has texture, but it's a little thin to my liking. Sweet oat biscuits, honeycomb, nutmeg, gooseberries. It's an easygoing Speyside with meadow fruits. Buttery and doughy, juicy fruit chewing gum, vanilla, caramel, pineapple, nugget, and there's a nutty tartness to it, almost like a blood orange. And the finish is minty, mint leaves, white grapes, treacle, root ginger, and it lingers for a good length with warm flavours of nutmeg, waffles, wholemeal bread, and a bit of ginger spice in the end. The alcohol does feel a little warm with this, but it's quite a pleasant spice as it lingers on the tongue. I'm going to try 5 drops of water in this. And again, a lovely Scotch mist there. So on the nose. And now the vanilla is more upfront. Like fondant icing, whipped cream, custard filled donuts. But water brings out more of the oak, almost like freshly sown plants. Brown sugar and hazelnut. There's much less fruit here with the water, but much of the sweeter bourbon aromas are around as well. I'll try the mouth. And it does maintain some of that citrusy zestiness, but like water on the nose, more of the oak comes through. There's not much change in the spice levels, just more vanillas, caramels, and brown sugars to be found in the mouth when you add water. And the finish is like that as well. The spice maybe goes down a bit, but there's more vanilla, caramel, and brown sugars. It becomes more almost that sticky sweetness. So, well, I don't know who doesn't like a good whiskey mystery, which is precisely what the Enigma range should offer. And after tasting it, and it's definitely a Speyside, and I think it's almost certainly a William Grant Speysider. It's inviting, subtle in the palate, and boasts an impressive age statement. And it is £175 a bottle, so it's one we won't taste too often unless we have deep pockets. It's perfectly pleasant, fruity, drinkable whiskey. It has some of the hallmarks of an older whiskey, but I would have put it closer to 20 rather than 27 if I was tasting this blind. It's a good quality bourbon cask maturation, and I'd happily drink a few more drams of it. So, the other half of the second Duncan's D-side oatcake. So, for our fifth whiskey, we're going to have an Ardmore. Oh, it's a nice colour, this one. 2012, 11-year-old at 46%. So, Ardmore is a substantial Victorian distillery, and it does have a big output. And it's unusual also because it produces a pitted Highland malt, which balances the wood smoke elements with a more floral nature of peat, as you'd expect coming from, well, not coming from Islay. It's an overlooked gem in the Highlands and was established in 1898, primarily for blending. And it's long been associated with Teacher's Highland Cream. And it even features which Teacher's Highland Cream features an image of distillery on the back of its front label, which becomes more evident as the level of whiskey in the bottle goes down. Highland Teacher's Cream has lost its staying power, but the distillery continues to operate, with the site serving as a living museum of whiskey production. Unfortunately, the quality of Ardmore whiskey often goes unrecognised by its parent company. Now, this one was distilled in 2012 and re-racked into ruby port casks in 2020 before bottling in 2024, so 4 years in ruby port casks. And sometimes the mention of ruby port casks will send whiskey aficionados fleeing. But I think Ardmore's distillate possesses the strength to withstand such bold wood influence. So this is 11 years old, and look at the colour of it. It's taken on the cask colouring there. You can see the ruby redness, the dark, rich red there. And it has fantastic tears as well. Let's see what we have in the nose here. It's like rhubarb was thrown on the barbecue. And with that rhubarb, we served Turkish delight. And smoky bacon crisps. Wood chips. Chocolate. Toffee. And there's a touch of cherry in there as well. It's coal, fatty bacon, and barbecue. Honeycomb. Currant bun and flintiness. Red grapes and a smoky residue. This is quite an old-fashioned peatiness, but it's quickly joined by summer berries and red grapes and old oak. Light, sweet, and floral peat. It's a lovely, very Ardmore-ish nose. Tobacco, cigar book, dried and red fruits, some citrus fruits, some ginger, cloves, and licorice. Do you know what? This nose is a real treat. Let's see what the mouth does. Strawberries, cigars, cherries. There's a bit of ashiness, sweet mulch, and dark chocolate in there. There's a touch of rubber, orange rind, and it has sort of molten chocolate cake. Raisins, dried fruit, and ripe strawberries. A flamed orange peel. And it's a lovely mellow peat up front. And a little vanilla from the previous bourbon cask. Red currants and rich spices. And on the finish, I get the red currants, black pepper, black forest gateau, cherries. It's got a light honeyed finish with a little bit of the flash of the sweetness from the wine cask. It's more lightly peated on the finish with coffee, blackberries, sweet vanilla, and some tobacco. And then a dry spiciness takes over with some muddy tones. So this one, 4 drops of water. And the peat smoke is very delicate and floral. And it wraps around all kinds of aromas like fresh, juicy plums, freshly shaved ginger. And it's like a cheesecake, a freshly baked cheesecake. And it's like a lovely cigar tobacco and date syrup, spices in it, Nutella. On the mouth with water, it starts juicy, sweet, and syrupy. And there's a great play between lots and lots of red fruit and peat. After that, a rich and bold body develops. Black pepper, chocolate, and some tannins as well. This is a powerhouse. And adding water to it is no problem at all. It swims like a champion. It makes it a little more accessible and more balanced somehow. And the finish. The floral peat smoke lingers on and on, still carried away by that red fruitiness. Autumn, roasted spices, bold espresso flavors, and Nutella stuffed crepes. It's a smoking oak, aromatic pipe tobacco. I don't know if you've had clam pipe tobacco, it's a bit like that. And a delicate, slightly dry nuttiness, like walnuts. Well, I've had a few Ardmores, and uh, I thought I would hold it. It would hold its own against the influence of the ruby port casks finish, and it certainly does. This was like driving into a lush woodland with a burst of berries sprinkled on top. If you like port and you like smoke, this whiskey is an absolute hit. It, for me, this whiskey hits the exact sweet spot of how an Ardmore should shine. It's probably one of the best Ardmores I've tasted, if not the best one. So I'm gonna have half a Duncan's of Deeside okay. So from the set, this is the sixth out of the six, and it's another Enigma. And it's an unnamed spirit from the Islay region, and Cadenhead haven't got a clue. They just got the cask, and they knew it was from Islay, and they didn't know what it was. Uh, it was distilled in 2008, and it spent 15 years maturing in its bourbon barrel before it was bottled in 2024. So let's see what we have here. It's very light. Will I hazard a guess at this one by the time I finished it? Well, let's have a look. Very thin tears. 54.8%. Let's see what the nose is like. Well, I can tell you several that it's not. I get applewood, marzipan, vanilla sponge cake. And the nose carries through as soon as you pour it, the peat is unmistakable. You get chimney soot. prickly pear, grilled lemons, sawdust, smoked mackerel, and some sea salt. It's not particularly coastal, but the more you spend time with it, the coastalness does seem to open up in the glass. You do get the whiff of the 54.8%, but the smoke stands up to white pepper spice. And as you go back in, you get a little bit of vanilla sweetness right in the background. We'll try them out. And it opens up with citric acid, pink peppercorns, but that moves into white pepper and a sort of creamy and vanilla sweetness. It's much sweeter than expected. The smoke is very much present, but it sort of works as a background note rather than engulfing your palate. Creme brulee and chipotle sauce. And on the finish, salted caramel, bonfire embers, a little raw spirit, and some chili spice. That's a good length of finish. It's relatively syrupy. And I'm getting some coffee, mocha specifically. Honey lemon boil sweets, chorizo, and rock salt. I'm going to put 5 drops of water in this. And now it's more of a mellow peat, but it's still very much present. And a sort of more a little smoked meat rather than fish. It does feel a little more savoury. It feels a bit simpler than it was before dilution. I'm not sure, even at 54.8, it needs too much water in it. Ooh. With water, it gets the cask sweetness, banana bread, ginger cake with lots of smoke still sticking around. It feels rounder, the smoke, and it blends well with the stronger cask flavours. It does feel there's less going on with the water, but it feels a little bit more drinkable with water. And with water, the smoke goes up a notch. It becomes a bit spicier and meatier. So this is one of these drums where the peat is much heavier on the nose than the palate. And I was quite surprised at how much of the bourbon cask sweetness came through as I sipped it. It's a good quality Islay malt, well balanced, good body, and it's got a lovely, pleasant finish. I don't think for me. It's certainly not Lafroig, Ligabulin, or Ardmore, Kilcommon. Uh, I I don't think it's Bruichladdich. It's not got the coastal nature of Bruichladdich. And I've tasted a lot of Coolina, and it's not Coolina. I think this may well be a Bruichladdich Lochendar is my kind of thinking about 35 parts per million. It's got a more sweety peatiness to it. So anyway, that was an interesting tasting, and thank you for listening. We'll see you again.